What's up, everybody? Welcome to Gamescast now, episode 103, topic 2. I'm Alex. This is our conversational gaming show, a show that airs every other week, Monday, Wednesday, and Saturday, where I talk about a variety of gaming topics. Now, in this video, I want to talk about a little bit of a news story that happened a few weeks ago, your time watching this, but I want to take a different spin on it and kind of talk about something that hasn't really been talked about, and that is, obviously, the Watch Dogs delay, okay? And Ubisoft had delayed quite a few games, 3 games in all, and they moved it back substantially. It's now coming out in between March of 2020 and April of 2021, or, a little bit later than that. And Watch Dogs had originally been said to release on March 6, 2020. So it's been pushed. This is now, in my opinion, how I'm looking at it, a fall of 2020 game. I don't know if it would necessarily be in like that springtime of 2021. Obviously, in that fiscal quarter or in that fiscal year that they pushed it back into, yeah, it could be for sure. But if you think about it, where they originally wanted Watch Dogs to release, which was the fall, they originally wanted to release it in November. It was originally supposed to come out in November of this month, basically 2019. We were supposed to have our hands on it. It got pushed to March, and then obviously now got pushed kind of in a way indefinitely. And like I said, it's not the only game that has been delayed. But the question is, and I know we've gotten reports that like, hey, there's going to be a lot of Ubisoft titles for next generation consoles, and a lot of them are kind of unnamed. Basically, half and half are unnamed. All of these games that have been pushed are now said to be cross. They're going to be next generation as well as current. And then there's some unnamed games. Splinter Cell is heavily being, has always been reported as being one of them, which would be awesome to return to the Splinter Cell world. But for me, the biggest thing that I question or I wonder now is Assassin's Creed. How does this affect Assassin's Creed? Now, Assassin's Creed is not confirmed. There's nowhere, Ubisoft has not come out saying, hey, Assassin's Creed's coming out in fall of 2020, but the way that things were lining up, the way that release dates were lining up, the way that development time was lining up from Assassin's Creed Odyssey to whatever this new game is, which, again, has been kind of leaked a lot in terms of, like, Vikings, right? It's probably going to have something to do with Vikings. It's been reported a lot. And the question, I guess what I've always assumed, is that Assassin's Creed would come out in fall of 2020. If you've been watching the channel long enough, you would have heard me say multiple times throughout this year that I saw like a fall of 2020 being like a new Call of Duty game. The new sports games would be next, and these are all next generation. New Call of Duty, new sports games, new Battlefield, and Assassin's Creed, as well as the exclusives for the different consoles, and maybe a bunch of Game of the Year editions or remastered, something edition of games that released in 2020. Dying Light 2, maybe a Final Fantasy 7, maybe Cyberpunk, maybe Avengers. I've been saying that for this entire year. The only thing so far I've been proven wrong on is Battlefield, which we got word of EA said that them and DICE, they're giving DICE longer to work on it, so it will not release next fall. It'll probably release the fall afterwards, which is great. Give them more time to develop it. That's awesome. So that's really the only thing I've been off on. I've always said that I believe there'll be an Assassin's Creed game to be that kind of cross thing, that you could buy it on next generation, PS5, Xbox Scarlet, but you can also get it on current gen, maybe like October, November of 2020. Watch Dogs being pushed, though, I get that they're not the same studio, and that's ultimately a big thing I guess I should touch on. I get they're not the same studio. I get that the people making Watch Dogs aren't the people making Assassin's Creed, but the way they've always handled it is they really don't release, especially that close. They can release the same year, and I've actually kind of backed them up and defended them and said, like, hey, it's probably okay if you do that. You could have a Watch Dogs release in March and then Assassin's Creed release in the fall. I think if you split them up, half and half, like one in the springtime and then one in the fall, I think that's totally cool. But at the same time, you need to promote them, and they need to be big. This year, in the fall, the big game we got, quote unquote big game, was Ghost Recon Breakpoint, which did not do well whatsoever. And part of the reason, not just it kind of being a game that was just like it wasn't bad, but it wasn't good. It just kind of existed. But Ubisoft really didn't push it at all. Ubisoft didn't talk about it. Ubisoft really did almost next to nothing on this game, and that really doesn't happen with Watch Dogs, and it 1000% doesn't happen happened with Assassin's Creed. Watch Dogs has always been that franchise that's kind of gone up and down. Watch Dogs 1 sold very, very well, but it was also promoted. Remember, it was kind of like shown as like, hey, here's the true next generation game, and it turned out to definitely not be that. I really didn't even like the first Watch Dogs. I actually despised it because of those kind of things, but it sold very, very well. Watch Dogs 2 was a massive, massive improvement. Tyler and I played it quite often. We love that game. That was actually Tyler's game of the year that year, and I actually really, really enjoyed it as well. That game did not sell well. I think a lot of people, kind of turned their backs on it after the first one. But my point is, like, that's a franchise that Ubisoft wants to be big, and Ubisoft wants all of their franchises to sell very, very well. They don't really accept games flopping, okay? They really try and push their games, and they really try and make them last as long as they can. For Honor is a good example, right? That game didn't sell all that well initially, but it's really stood the test of time. Throughout time, it's sold very, very well, and obviously they keep putting expansion packs onto it, and it does very, very well for them. Watch Dogs Legion is a game that they want to be very, very big and do very, very good, and I want the same thing. I want Legion to be fantastic. I'm going to be getting it day one, but I want this game to be the best it can. With it now being delayed, like I said, I see it either as fall of 2020 or like February of 2021, like right after we flip to the new year of 2021. And if you have an Assassin's Creed game that comes out, say, November of 2020, that's tough because really you can't have a Watch Dogs game come out at the same time because you're having two massive games and they both be cross-generation, and you got to have people get them, right? Like, you need people to buy this. Assassin's Creed is a massive franchise for them. You need people to buy it. At the same time, even if Watch Dogs doesn't come out in the fall, say it comes out in, again, like February, that's only like 3 months from if Assassin's Creed, say, came out in November. And again, Watch Dogs would kind of be that same thing. Open world, cross-generation, taking advantage of the new console, the new power that comes with it, buy our game. And it's just really tough. Again, I get they're not the same studios, but Ubisoft's a publisher, right? And Ubisoft really wants both of these games to sell very well. And again, I've always defended that they can come out the same year as each other, but I think there needs to be a little bit of a spacing in between them. You can't have them come out 2-3 months apart. I really don't know if that would work. Those higher profile games coming out that close to each other, I really don't think that would work at all. I think you need to spread it out. You even see games that Sony does. Sony's made some mistakes over the past couple of years of having their games, sometimes smaller, exclusive and published games, come out too close to bigger ones, and you see them kind of fail because of it. You gotta space your games out, and that's a big thing that publishers do just in general. And Ubisoft, I think, has always done it very, very well. They kind of always structure it to be that kind of way. You look at what they did this year, basically, they did it. This year was The Division the first half of the year, and then Ghost Recon the second half. Pretty weak year overall. The Division 2 did not sell all that well, and Ghost Recon Breakpoint did not sell all that well at all. So both those games were actually probably disappointments, but normally you have bigger games. Normally you have, look back to years past. You've had For Honor. For Honor came out in February the year it released, and you have Assassin's Creed in the fall. So you have two big games normally. I know Ubisoft has more than just those, but those are kind of the big guns, and those kind of like bookend your year. They start the year off, right? February, March, somewhere in that range, and then somewhere in like October, November, you have another big game come out, and those are your two massive games of the year. That's where you put a lot of your marketing in, and yeah, you'll have other games in general, but that's what you really focus on, right? That's a smart, I think that's pretty darn smart. Say what you want about Ubisoft, but that's a smart model. I think Watch Dogs really messes that up because obviously they wanted Watch Dogs to be really, I think they expected Ghost Recon Breakpoint to not do all that well, and they were like, it's fine because we also have Watch Dogs, which we expect to do very well. But then Watch Dogs was pushed into the spring, and they were like, okay, that's not that bad. March can be Watch Dogs, and then fall is Assassin's Creed. Also, we have Skull and Bones, and maybe we can fit that in somewhere eventually one day. But now Watch Dogs has been pushed again. Now it's like, oh, okay, Watch Dogs will probably be ready to go same time as the next Assassin's Creed, but can you have both of them come out? Now you're kind of sending one to die, and really it's not going to be Assassin's Creed. Assassin's Creed is too big of a franchise and too big of like a name to be taken down. Watch Dogs is the one that would suffer. And that really sucks because it's the third game of the franchise. I think a lot of questions will be asked of, is it the final game? Like, will it be the final game? And if it sells really badly and the game just doesn't do all that well, that's not going to help its chances, right? But because of the structure of the release, it very well could. So not only does this affect Assassin's Creed, and ask the question, like, does Assassin's Creed actually come out in the fall of 2020 now? It doesn't even just influence that. It also says, hey, if Ubisoft decides that, well, we just got to kind of put them both out like within 2 months of each other. If that's what they have to do, I think Ubisoft then also says to themselves, and we expect Watch Dogs to not do all that well. And that's just plainly it. And then it would come out and it'll probably underperform. And it would probably do a lot better if it was released some other time. But you can't sit on a game for like 8 months. The game can't be done, say the game goes gold for October of next year. You can't just sit on it till like April when it just is a nicer release schedule for you. That doesn't work, because then what are they going to do for like 6 months? Just sit there? I get that they can polish it and stuff like that, and they could always work on the game more. But if the game's done, and you probably want them to work on your next thing, right? I mean, it's all about money. You want new games coming out so you can make money off of it. It's not like an evil premise or anything. That's just the way the business works. So you don't want them just idly sitting by and maybe working a little bit on Watch Dogs, tweaking it, when they could be working on their next massive game, right? You'd want them to do that. And then you'd also want Watch Dogs to release. So it's really tough. I think the delay in all really probably frustrates Ubisoft in general. And I'm specifically very, very interested to see what happens because of it. What does it do to Assassin's Creed? And does it end up hurting Watch Dogs' sales when it comes out? We'll obviously have this discussion a whole lot more when we actually get release dates. Once we know about this Assassin's Creed, once we know what the new release date for Watch Dogs is, we could probably circle back and have this conversation again. It's definitely something I would like to do. So, guys, let me know in the comments below. What do you think? Do you think this Watch Dogs delay does anything, basically, to Assassin's Creed? Do you think it's going to hurt Watch Dogs? Let me know in the comments below. Make sure you guys subscribe to our YouTube channel podcast. Now hit that bell icon so you guys know when these videos go up. And thank you, as always, for watching. Again, we have a brand new topic for you on Saturday, and I hope to see you guys there.